And you're okay if I take this?
Sure.
Okay. You want to see if that works? I have to point it at something? I don't think that's moving forward. It could be me. Maybe I'm not doing something right.
May have been. I was using the computer, so let me just do one thing.
You got it.
So yeah, it just takes us from across the street at 360 side street.
You want me to? Or wait for the city manager? Jump in. All right, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for having. I'm Paul D'Angelo with the City of Asheville. I'm the Community Development Program Director here with Nikki Reed, who I'll introduce in a few minutes. Thanks so much for having us here and asking us to be here. Just a couple quick thank yous for Kenneth Hunter, who we've been coordinating with. So thanks so much. Hopefully we put together a presentation that'll be helpful to you all. Is Jason Dawkins here? He had to step out? Okay, I've been communicating with him a lot about affordable housing over this last year, so I'm looking forward to meeting him in person. He's been a great partner. Seems like a great person you'll have at Rocky Mount. And then lastly, City Manager, Ms. Maltoni, we've met a few times, particularly the last time you were in Asheville. You're very gracious, so it's really great to see you again. And thanks again for having Nikki and I today. So I'll go ahead and get started and talk a little bit about what we're trying to do about affordable housing. We are going to hold questions till the end, if that's okay, and probably take a lot of questions on the tour so y'all can get some one-on-one time. I'll be on one bus, Nikki will be on the other, so we'll be moving forward with that around 3 o'clock. So I'll get started. No surprise that affordable housing everywhere, including Asheville, is very hard and complicated work. Although we're grateful to have a team of people who are really passionate about it and really passionate about aligning folks' housing costs with their overall income to give them a chance to not only balance the house budget, but perhaps at wealth building. And so it really does, there's a lot of heart and emotion to affordable housing, but it also is a numbers game at the end of the day. My background is in the public, private, and nonprofit sector of affordable housing, so I've kind of worn the hats of all of them. So depending on the day of the week or the policy or who I'm meeting with, my brain can shift around and see what makes sense. But that balance sheet at the end, working with the bank to get the loan, really those numbers have to work or we're not going to be able to put any units, let alone affordable units, on the ground. And so we're really proud that we've got some great partners at the table willing to work with us on a daily basis. So there's a lot of definitions around affordable housing. The definition that we really kind of like is that most wages and salaries and incomes we produce in our area don't support the average housing costs in Asheville, both rental and home ownership. We're seeing this obviously across the country, especially here in Asheville, with a large tourism and service economy. So our definition is a healthy, affordable, mixed income community needs a variety of housing types at a variety of price points, both home ownership and rental, for the variety of incomes and wages you produce in your area and in Asheville. So $1 million person, awesome, good for you. You'll have a housing opportunity. Manager at a local store, somebody running the desk at the gym, hotel, restaurant, hopefully we have some housing for them, and that's really what we're working on and what we try to put together with affordable housing in Asheville. And clearly right now we've got a couple of mismatches. Not only do we have lower wages and stagnant wages with the service and tourism economy, but we have very high housing costs. I'll talk a little bit about that in a few minutes. Not only rental, but also home ownership. Also, there's a mismatch right now with the supply and demand. We are pretty low on the supply of housing. It is really pushing up a lot of costs, especially obviously with home ownership. The rental market, I'll talk about in just a minute, but we really do have a mismatch in not just one area, but really both of these areas. And so, of course, the definition from HUD about households, both rental and home ownership, should not spend more than 30% of their income on housing costs. When it's a renter, this includes your utilities as well as your rent. And when you're a homeowner, it's your mortgage, insurance, and taxes. And the more we spend on housing, the less we have to spend on other necessities in life, as well as supporting your local economy. And this is something that I think our team really thinks about, that the economic folks at the table, that this is a real economic issue, an economic development issue, that the more that folks spend on the life's necessities, there's not a lot left over to support your local economy. And then you're slowly pushing that into the hands of fewer and fewer people. So affordable housing is an economic development issue. I think it's the one area of folks at a table that I would like to see more of. And collectively, we're trying to do a better job at that. And under Nikki's new leadership, which we'll talk about in a minute, we're really excited to see more economic folks at the table. So we try to take a very complicated problem around affordable housing and simplify it as best as we possibly could. And so hopefully that'll show in these slides, but again, we can take questions later. But we, of course, had to recognize the challenges that we have in Asheville. Those top 9, I believe, come from the Urban Land Institute of the basic challenges that every community is going to see around affordable housing. The one big challenge for us in that list, particularly amongst everything else, is land prices and availability. We've got an acre of land basically within the urban core of Asheville going for $2 million, give or take. It is extremely high. You try to add affordable housing to that, that is really hard to make those numbers work. So we have that issue. And then a couple that aren't on that major list of 9, we have topography challenges in Asheville, market challenges, like I talked about, the supply and demand. Quality of life is great. Be careful what you wish for. We've created this beautiful Asheville. It's got all these natural elements to it. So many people want to be here, that can naturally push up costs. So always trying to find that balance. And then lastly, lower and more stagnant wages in our service and tourism economy. So a couple of things that aren't on that list that make it more challenging, the challenges that we face around affordable housing. So also very important that we take a look at the data. We do a housing needs assessment for our 4-county region every 5 years. Every 2.5 years between there, we do specifically for Asheville and Buncombe County. So we just did this. I think the actual figures came out in early 2020. And so these are the availability of home prices. So if you can see this chart, the lighter blue color was what was available in November of 2014. When they did that same count in July of 2019, you can see the number of houses that decreased. So the actual houses below 300,000 came in at under 300 houses. That is not a lot of inventory that is going to be on the ground. And we're really, with working with somebody in a 100% area median income family, you're looking at a price range at or about 275,000. So we've got some supply issues there with the type of housing that's being built. And of course, with housing costs and this region that is attracting so many people, we're seeing housing costs, I think last year came in at about 355,000 was the average home price. Also taking a look at some local housing challenges. And Kenneth, I don't know if anything happened with your computer there. Thank you, sir. And so another local housing challenge is taking a look at the number of folks who are renters versus homeowners and where that wage falls. What we've noticed over the last 5 years is that we're climbing the income gap here when it comes to home ownership. So where 4 or 5 years ago, somebody making about 55,000 would have the opportunity to home ownership, that has risen up the income chart to basically be about 75 or 80,000. So you have to think about that's a large 25,000 give or take increase in income, and you're seeing people being forced to stay as renters, not having the opportunity to wealth build. We're not seeing the houses at the housing at the price that we need to help out our average family in Asheville. So that's climbing the chart to where if you're making under about 75,000, you probably can, as an individual or family, you probably can't afford to purchase a house in the city of Asheville right now, and it's a real struggle. We also hear, again, the housing needs assessment, Patrick Bellin and the Bellin report. Our vacancy rate is right now at about 5%, which is a healthy market. where it stays at about 5% for our market rate apartments. As you can imagine, the affordable vacancy rate is pretty much at 0%. We always have no availability in our affordable units. They pretty much get listed and they are immediately taken by an affordable individual or family. And then, of course, it's important to understand who's cost burdened in your community. So nearly half of our folks, our renters, are cost burdened, paying more than 30% of their income towards housing. And about 1 out of every 5 renters is severely cost burdened, paying more than 50% of their income on housing. And rising rents in 2014, rent in Asheville has increased by about 5.2% annually. So for the average renter, that means their rent, if it was $1,000 in 2014, it would now be $1,350. The average rent overall comes in at about $1,200 to $1,250 in Asheville, 1 or 2 bedroom apartment. Very high and a struggle for us. And our homeowners are struggling as well to a certain extent, not as much as our renters, but about 1 out of every 5 homeowners is cost burdened, and about 8% are severely cost burdened. And we do some checks on homes available under 200,000, particularly recently under 275, which again is kind of my price mark of what I think 100% AMI family can afford. We did this twice in the past fall. We had about 37 units for sale under 275,000 in the city of Asheville, and we think probably at best 21 of them were move-in ready. So 20 houses available at any given time at a price range of 275,000, which is basically our 100% area median income. So while we're here to talk about some good things that we're doing, just a minute, we can also take the hard questions, and happy to take those, as our city manager talked about, the tough conversations, because we have our own struggles up here, and hopefully y'all can learn something with what we're doing here in Asheville that might make a difference for Rocky Mount. So quickly, the area median incomes, this is where we came in 2020. If you're talking rental, anybody in red can't afford the average rent. So we're talking the area median income, these averages, all of those folks in these categories here, 1 person, 4 person, 3 person family at those incomes can't afford the average rent in Asheville. And when it comes to what it takes to get into a mortgage, about $1,625, which went down from the year before because of the interest rates that we've seen go down. Although I would now argue with the prices we just got, this is probably more like $1,700. None of these folks could actually afford that mortgage payment. And of course, that mortgage payment would be your taxes and insurance. So you're pushing up into the 120% AMI single individual, 60,000 who cannot afford to purchase the average home in Asheville. And so again, a healthy mixed income community with a variety of housing types. And then again, following that line of simplifying what we're doing, we tried to take a look at what exactly the city's role is. So we can obviously be a funder. We get those calls all the time from our partners looking to see where the funding is. City-owned land, which probably Nikki will talk about some more with what is our inventory of city-owned land. Regulatory, which we're trying to take more of a look at with our planning department, something recently in Raleigh about how they're talking about moving away from single family zoning a little bit to add in more about townhomes and condos. So it'll be very interesting. And most importantly, a convener collaborator, and that's trying to match folks. We'll talk about that in just a second. And so we have also, again, to try to simplify, what is the gap needed? What is that funding that somebody needs to actually assist somebody at area median income? So you can talk anywhere from $80,000 to $120,000 per unit in subsidy is going to be needed to keep a unit affordable for about 20 years. And that math, for people who struggle with understanding what that looks like, if we're asking for a market rate person to take $400 less a month in rent to be able to help out with the average person and affordable, that's $400 a month times 12 months times 20 years comes in at $96,000. So that helps us determine where that subsidy is. And again, trying to look at this at a balance sheet perspective, how do we fill that gap? Does the city fill all of that? Do we fill that with our partners? How does that work to actually fill that subsidy? And again, hopefully showing that we're trying to simplify complicated. We're either going to subsidize on the front end with a developer in some kind of development deal, whether we're putting in city-owned land or something from the trust fund, or we're going to subsidize on the back end with a renter or homeowner, a voucher or something with down payment assistance. So our tools, which is probably something you all might ask us about more later, but this is what we're trying to look in. And our goal is to always have everybody who presents us about building some kind of units for home for housing, what we call 20-80-20. We're asking every developer that comes up to us that at least 20% of the units assist individuals and families at or below 80% of the area median income for at least 20 years. And we can do that by offering some of these tools, whether it's the disposition of city-owned land, where we could sell that for $1, a housing trust fund, which is basically the city's bank that we could use as a loan at 0 to 2% interest on very favorable terms. It's been around since 2004, I believe, $500,000 yearly from the general fund budget, but we also did have our housing bond just a couple of years ago that put in $25 million, which was great to parts of that. Land use incentive grant, where we rebate back property taxes from the improvements. So if, especially this is very popular with our market rate folks, if the dirt that's out there right now, they're paying $1,000 in property taxes to the city, and after they build an affordable or complex with some affordable units, and that city tax is $100,000, we'll rebate back that $99,000 for X amount of years based on a chart we put together to help fill that subsidy that we were talking about of about $80,000 or $100,000 per unit. We also have some icing on the cake, which is a discount for our metropolitan sewer district if it's affordable, fee rebates where you can get 50 to 75 to 100% many of your fees in working with our development services department, as well as expedited review to move that process, being time is money. Home investment partnership funds, of course, with HUD funding, and the bond that I talked about as well. And lastly, I think the thing we're doing with our partners is we welcome all types of partners. So if you're mission-driven, tax credit, or a nonprofit, they're always at our door wanting to partner with us for affordable units. They, by definition, with capacity and subsidy, might need more time or more money. Something that we've done, particularly I think since I've been at the city and working with Nikki, is really try to get more for-profits at the table. We can't build our way out of our affordable housing issues without the for-profits at the table. We did a quick back and napkin. If 20% of all the units for 4 years had been from market rate units had been affordable, we would have like an additional 412 units on the ground. Not a ton, but that's 412 more units than we have. So you need your development partners, and the market rate folks are interested in being a part of the solution to preserve and protect. So a couple of takeaways from the session that Nikki and I did in 2019 about trying to focus on 60% AMI, identifying the gaps, the call on the for-profit developers and the bankers to be at the table, and building a community coalition with more partners at the table. And then this is kind of the world we live in all the time, trying to put some development deals together. So who are our partners that we already have here? What are some of the tools that we have available to us? What are some of the incentives? And who is our target audience of our AMIs and what we're trying to do? So this is where we always try to match a little bit of a game here to try to figure out what's the best tool for the right developer for the right AMI. And that's worked for us. And quickly, I'll go through these slides, move over to Nikki, but these are some things we'll see today. Lee Walker Heights, rebuild of public housing. City put $4.2 million into that. It was 96 units being rebuilt into 212 units with the RAD conversion, rental assistance demonstration. And very excited that we got several levels of AMI with our city investment. We'll see this today. That's much further along. They're actually just about to move residents in, I think. 360 Hilliard, you'll also see this was a for-profit developer who gave us 34 of their, I believe, 82 units, give or take, affordable, 2 levels of AMI, a willingness to accept housing choice vouchers. We did a housing trust fund, land use incentive grant, as well as city-owned land. So it's a very unique deal that we'll talk about today. And we'll see that as we stop there today. Amaranth Apartment, very typical tax credit. We always welcome our tax credit developers. So we were able to do some extra housing trust fund dollars there to support that gap in development. We won't be seeing that today, but happy to answer questions on that one. Ironwood Apartments. This was a kind of our first for-profit at the table with our land use incentive grant. Full disclosure, I used to work at Tribute and walk up and down the hallways wondering why we couldn't be a part of the affordable housing solution. So after I left to work for the city, they remembered that. They came up and we're working with them on that property tax abatement. Very excited. We'll drive by that and see some dirt moving on that, which is great. And that's a rendering. And then last but not least, Habitat for Humanity. So the home ownership piece, which we'll talk probably about on the bus, is a complete struggle. I am out of ideas at the moment, but Habitat was able to move quicker with our housing trust fund. They can do about 5 or 6 houses a year within the city of Asheville. They were able to pump that up with this housing trust fund loan that we did. So very excited, and we're hoping to rinse and repeat this with them to hopefully get some more housing in our area. So quickly, in the last, basically, I would say 18 months, about 373 units of affordable housing, targeting different AMIs, city investment coming in at about 35,000 a unit. So we're really trying. We need more. We certainly know we need more, but it's a start, and we think we've got some good ideas. So now I'm going to switch it over to Nikki Reed, who is my partner in crime, and I know hopefully we're doing okay on time at 2:35. If you all don't mind for a nice round of applause for Nikki, she is now our interim community and economic development director. We couldn't be more thrilled, so if you want to give her a congratulatory round of applause. And we're grateful to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. So I hope that you're starting to see kind of the methodology here that's presenting itself. And I appreciate Paul because what he went through with his presentation is really how we approach this. So one, the importance of data. So doing the housing needs assessment that the city does every 5 years is a really key study that we do to understand those incomes in our area and understand what housing affordability means for our community. That helps staff, that helps us set our targets for what we want to achieve, and also really helps us understand how this dynamic market continues to evolve. I think even as now we're looking at what happened during COVID, Asheville has become one of those locations where people who work remotely want to live here. So we're having to continue to adjust that strategy because more people are moving there, putting pressure on our supply. So we're having to continue to double up, double down in our efforts and make sure that we can meet that challenge. So the other thing about data, the other important point is that we also did an inventory of our city-owned land. So when you own land, that's a really important tool that you can use to leverage affordable housing. And so we'll be going by the property at 360 Hilliard. That was a piece of city-owned land that we used to achieve an affordable housing goal that was set by council members. So you're seeing how data plays this huge role in creating that policy foundation. And then the other thing was the importance of those tools. So Paul showed it earlier, how we're using city-owned land and using a policy that we developed for city-owned land to really inform that. Using the power of the city's taxing authority to be able to rebate those taxes, do a grant, an incentive grant, basically, as a way to incentivize affordable housing. And then also look at a funding strategy. So the Housing Trust Fund is a general fund allocation that goes into another account within the city that is our Housing Trust Fund loan there. So using those tools, you can see how data has informed policy. And now what we're starting to see after years of work, really years of work creating that foundation, is some of it in action. So when we presented to council, our new council, we really had some new council members this past year join. We started to show that how the work of previous councils to really set that table is now showing what's possible. So I'm going to just walk us through some of these. We're also going to be able to see them in action when we go on the tour. But here's some of the highlights of our upcoming work plan. 319, Beaver View Purpose Built. And I think what I'll do is go ahead and advance the slide and talk about 319 Biltmore. So this property is directly adjacent to Lee Walker Heights. It was a 5-acre site. It's adjacent to a public housing community that was converted into RAD. We'll see those units coming out of the ground. And the city went ahead and bought the property to allow for a greater development in conjunction with the Lee Walker Heights development. So we issued an RFP last February, basically outlining the goals that we wanted to achieve with the property. We wanted mixed income, we wanted mixed use, we wanted a certain level of affordability. And then we issued that RFP, had a great response, and ultimately selected Homes Urban as the top candidate. So that will then go through the city council process this spring, where they will come forward with their final proposal, and city council will vote on that in conjunction with the policy that they previously approved. So what we're seeing here too is that we have results that are tangible and quantifiable. We use the city-owned asset to really achieve a development that will serve the community. We're clear on what partners that we're bringing to the table for this particular development. The process that we used was this RFP process that we identified through our policy. And then the resources that we have to bring to bear is that city-owned land. So that really key component of how all these things work together to produce that ultimate result. And now moving forward, this is another property that we'll see, and we're going to drive by. So I'll kind of give you a lay of the land here. So this is a specific opportunity where the Housing Authority currently owns 20 acres in Beaverview. The city has under contract another 20 acres. It's kind of right in the middle in that yellow area. And then we had an existing piece of property, 15 acres, that we call Cedar Hill. So we're going to drive by on Beaverview, and we're kind of going to do a big loop around the parcel. So together this comprises 60 acres. And the view here is to do a purpose-built community. It's something that we learned, Deborah brought this over from her work in Charlotte. We are not only pairing housing with the people that need the housing and to meet the incomes, but we're also looking at a strong education component. So talking with our elementary school system, I think we're going to drive by the nearest elementary school here, seeing if there's room for the school on site. We're also working with our Parks and Recreation Department to build a new community center at this property too. And then that will all function to really serve the community in a deeper, more holistic way when you're really going from a cradle to college to career pipeline and really having that wraparound from housing to all the way through to schools. So we're really excited about that. Excited about what's possible there and looking forward to that. So it'll be very interesting to see. And when you drive by, we'll see the neighborhood and you'll see the need for investment. The road width there, the city streets, we need sidewalks, we need connectivity. It's an area that really does need investment. And so we're really excited about the opportunity to look at that property as well. Okay, doing a quick time check. This is a downtown site. We're purchasing property that's next door to our transit center. So we have a small transit station right now that's on city right-of-way in the middle of our downtown. We are purchasing property adjacent so that we can expand that transit center, but also looking at building affordable housing and kind of a transit-oriented development style on this property. So again, we're using city-owned land to be able to leverage that opportunity. And I think we'll see more as this property comes to life with what other options that we have. And let me see, I'm going to flip through and see if there's anything else. I want to get to one more thing, the single family. So we identified some smaller single family lots that the city owned, and we issued an RFP on those this past fall as well. And this is where the Community Land Trust comes in. I was thinking about the question that was asked earlier about gentrification. So in 2014, the city had some funding via the Tiger II planning grants. And we did some work with community in the east of Riverway, South Side neighborhood to talk about gentrification. And one of the things that came as a result of that planning effort was the need to form a community land trust. So that was back in 2014. And then in 2016 and 2017, the city worked with a consultant. We brought a consultant down. His name is Mike Brown out of Burlington Associates. A lot of experience with community land trust. So that person was really on point for working with community to really establish the framework for a community land trust in Asheville. That was 2016, 2017. Then when our bond passed in 2016, we also approved funding that would be directed towards the community land trust. So I'm really kind of getting to that point because it takes a while to really grow into that model, but there's certainly resources there to make it happen. And really, it's about understanding the approach, really understanding what it takes to form a community land trust. But at the heart of it, it's with community. So a nonprofit has now been fully formed by community, and they've now actually hired their executive director, which I hope you all will be able to talk with perhaps tomorrow. But the idea is that the city is also seed funding this. So that's the way that we kind of are continuing to support the single family initiative with the Community Land Trust, is to provide that seed funding for capital investment. So investing in houses that will be part of the Community Land Trust, as well as funding their operations. Because I'm sure, as you know, starting a nonprofit, having staff is something that's really key for nonprofits. So ensuring that if you're going to start something, having that ability to fund it year over year and to grow it through this process is important to actually make it a success. So we're happy that they were one of the groups that we have now awarded properties to. I think we're going to be driving by a smaller lot. I think we might drive by it. You can almost miss it because it's a very small lot, but nonetheless, it'll be good to check out and see what the future holds for that one. So it's 2:44, and I'm going to see, are we time to get on the bus, or do we have a little bit more for time to get on at 3? Okay, great. So let's see. The last thing, so I think it was really great to hear from Deborah Campbell about our homelessness and houselessness issues here in Asheville. So we are working right now with a local nonprofit partner. They're called Homeward Bound, and they are currently working to buy an older Days Inn hotel to establish a permanent supportive housing. So with this, we're really excited about the ability to take this older hotel and convert it into a facility that will provide wraparound housing. So just the housing stability services, as well as case management and other things like that, that will be on site to really help people as they transition from living in a transitional homeless scenario to having full supportive housing. So I think I was rushing through that so that we could get on the bus. But maybe we're going to have time for some questions, because I can't underscore enough how important it was to really see this process unfold through that data building and then through the policy making and then now seeing it in action. It really takes all three of those things to make it happen. So why don't I turn it over for questions? And I saw you move, so go forward.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Paul and Nikki. We're going to, because of time, we're going to try to limit the questions to our council, and so that we can move to the bus. And those that do have questions, if you can get them to Angie, we will try to get them in the chat line so we can respond to your question. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Exciting way that you've addressed a number of issues. I'm interested in particular about that purpose-built community. Sure. And did you start out with that as a strategy in your design? And did you look for partners, especially with the school system, about locating a school in that area that would, I'm assuming, serve that group, but also the area around that area? I mean, the area around that development?
Yeah, great question.
And did you, how did you address, I saw social determinants of health. I mean, healthcare is exciting to me. So how did you address that in your planning process and policy development?
Sure. So we're in the very early stages of this, but when Deborah came from Charlotte, she had specifically kind of talked about us wanting to, or her wanting to see a purpose-built community in Asheville. And then we just kind of, lucked out on this. It reminds me, I was thinking when Nikki was presenting that 2 years ago, 2019, with Dion Nelson, who works out of Charlotte with her group, with Laurel Street out of Charlotte, who's done work like this there. She was impressed at like community development when Nikki was in real estate. And so just by luck, we happened to be able to look at this assembly to be like, wait a second, we know that the Housing Authority is trying to rebuild Deaverview, and we own this, and then we saw that middle parcel come for sale. So our brains were like, wow, this is 60 acres. You need something of that size for a purpose built. It took, believe it or not, a year for about the city to grab that middle property. We're about to close on it in like 2 weeks. But it's very exciting. So once we knew that, we started meeting. We had reached out to Purpose Built, I think, last spring. And then we started meetings in the early fall with Purpose Built and slowly added some partners to the table. Obviously, the Housing Authority, and then the developers. We've talked to the school system. The Johnson Elementary is near there, but do we possibly need a new school here? Nikki might want to talk about the community center that we're possibly looking at putting over there. So we just started started our full meetings with Purpose Built August, September. We're about 6 months in, not without its challenges right now, but we're off to still trying to move off home plate, but very excited that we actually had the acreage to do something like Purpose Built, and now bringing in those partners that can make it more complete. And then Nikki, I don't know if you want to mention, the really important part about community center.
So I think and I was thinking about the social determinants of health and how that all factors in. And it's important to know, so Purpose Built is a nonprofit that is a separate agency. So we were very fortunate that when we reached out and said, hey, we've got this idea, we've heard about Purpose Built, they were offering their services to us to consult and really help us walk through how Purpose Built communities get established. So we're very fortunate that we're in their good hands. So they're using their experience that they've had to really walk us through. So that's a great resource for you all to follow up on. And then also, our partners that have come to the table, there's a lot about the community, the location, the census tract that it's in. The school there is one of our lower performing schools here in Asheville. So there's a lot of need that is also generating a lot of partnership that's coming. So when we talk about the location and the need for investment there, everyone is seeing that as a benefit that they want to get on board with. So we're really excited and hopeful that that project is going to take off. It'll take years, right? But I think we're getting there. I think we had one more question, and then we were going to start to mosey.
I've got a question.
Certainly.
What I've seen here is a lot of new building going on. Now, in Asheville, do you have some existing housing stock that you could possibly improve? If so, how did you go about doing that? And because in Rocky Mount, we have whole areas that we have existing housing stock, that we have infrastructure where we can potentially work with that. So I'm just curious if you've had those opportunities here in Asheville.
Not as much. We don't have necessarily what they would call the NOAA, the naturally occurring affordable housing. And we've had a lot of developers who've looked for older properties that perhaps they could pick up, but we don't necessarily have much of that work. We have done some rehab loans with some of our major partners like Mountain Housing Opportunity, but not a lot of that. Something that has recently come up that we're looking at, always trying to think of additional tools that could work, is we've been approached by 2 developers about purchasing market rate units and making them affordable, or a part of those affordable. So we're looking to see if we can preserve some market rate units, perhaps not older stock like you might be talking about, but if a market rate developer comes in with a partner who's got that kind of social equity, hey, we can pick up that 100-unit apartment complex that's not terribly old, and if we can work out some kind of land use incentive grant or property tax abatement, we'll give you 20 of those units affordable. So that's something that we're looking at with our slightly older market rate apartments that seem to be in play right now with the way of the whole economies around real estate are working, that there's a lot of money on the ground, that people are looking to purchase apartment buildings. And luck to us is a lot of them are social equity investors who want to see some level of affordability. So we're seeing how we can help make that happen in partnership with the developers to keep market rate units from being not luxurized, but more market rate for everyday folks with some affordable.
Can you give these 2 very knowledgeable teammates from the city of Asheville, Paul and Nikki, a round of applause? We also want to thank City Manager Campbell. I think she had to leave. Obviously, there is a lot of interest in this topic. It's something that's very near and dear to many of us, to all of us in this room, for sure. We took the time to be here. We want to stay on schedule, as we talked about. So as I wrap up for today, some of the takeaways, I think, are some great dialogues that we can continue on the tour. We do have our chat open where my dynamic duo partner, Dr. Val, is monitoring. So if you have questions in the public, if you are on our stream medias, feel free to drop questions in the chat. Any of you in the room may do the same. You may also write it out and give it to one of us. We'll make sure it gets addressed. as well as feel free to continue the dialogue on the tour bus. We do want to stay on schedule as much as possible. We are going to be heading from here to board the vehicles. I think, Ken, there's 2 trolleys, and you are free to take either one of them. We have modified the tour schedule because we do want to respect your time. All of us from the Rocky Mount area drove in last night, some of you early this morning, so we wanted to make sure we get back and everyone can have a restful evening, because we have a robust agenda for tomorrow and Friday. So with that said, we will close out for today. Enjoy the tour. And one second. Yes, we'll make sure we lock the door, and Mayor Pro Tem is going to come and close us out. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank all of you for being here. We do have a gift for our presenters. Again, thank you so much, our city manager, Deborah Campbell. Thank you so much to Mayor that had planned to be here. Thank you so much, Nikki and Paul, for the presentation. We do have a gift for the 4 of you. It's our box from the greater Rocky Mount City. Let's give the Lord and everybody hand praise. And this is our gifts for you. 4 of them. We will recess and reconvene outside for the tour, and tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, we will come back here and start again. Thank you so much. Have a great tour and a restful evening. We'll see you back here tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. Thank you.